I've talked a lot about how devs tried to stop piracy, but how did Nintendo do it with the NES? Nintendo used the 10NES chip, which they placed in the console and the cartridges, which would work sort of like a lock and key mechanism. Basically, the chips had a series of code sequences that it would randomly select in order to verify that the console and the game were legitimate. And since all the chips were identical, they would run the exact same code at the same time. But what happened if the code didn't match? Simple. The chip would cause the console to reset itself to try running the code again. And if it didn't work, it would just keep doing this in an endless loop. Now, you could mostly circumvent this by cutting a certain prong from the chip, but it didn't always work. In fact, the chip was so good, it took over 20 years for people to figure out how to fully crack the chip. But despite how good the chip was, it did have one major flaw, and that was in order for the chips to communicate, they used specific pins which were easily corroded and bent. And once the pins were unusable, you would get stuck in that endless reset loop no matter what you did. But despite this flaw, it's pretty impressive that it took this long for pirates to figure out how to get around this chip properly.